Namaste. If we take a careful look at our being, it looks like we are standing in a crowded place, a public square, as the mother says, which would be okay as long as we know where we have to go and we are only resting for a while at the public square. But our situation is such that anyone and everyone, any kind of force, sensory, emotional, a thought current, and it moves us and we start moving in that direction. So we start living like a puppet. In Savitri, there is a line where Sri Aurobindo describes a thinking puppet is this mind of life. So when we are like going in a bazaar and we see something and we instantly enter, it's a common experience. Maybe not so common because the common experience is we go to bazaar with the idea of buying something, but sometimes we go to a bazaar without the idea of buying something. And as we enter the bazaar, suddenly an impulse seizes us. We turn towards the left or the right and we enter the shop, and then another impulse seizes us. We pick up something, and so on and so forth. So we live life like that. And this is okay. Some people feel it's okay. What's wrong with it? Well, nothing wrong with it except that it brings in what Sri Aurobindo says incoherencies of fate. It's like a life which is led with which had so much possibility of going ahead, but it stays at the same place and a whole lifetime. As Sri Aurobindo puts in Savitri, a dim, long preparation is man's life. This I learned from so many experiences one has, but one of them was in Delhi Air Force posting. I used to go out for a walk, and this walk used to be just a couple of kilometers or 3 kilometers at the most. There was a chakkar, you step out of the Subrata Park, go out, and then come through the other gate. So every time we would go, there used to be a milestone. And the milestone was Amritsar, 401 miles, I still remember. But we were going through a national highway. So I made it a joke. I used to tell my friends, see, so much we move, but we are still having, Amritsar is still 401 miles. That's because we are moving in circles. So that's how Sri Aurobindo describes a circle of want and toil and hope and grief. In that constant circle. And what is, it's a grace when moments come when we are made to think, what is this life? But we waste it. We waste it either in complaining, or we waste it in grieving, or we waste it in pleasure. But what is the real purpose? So this is a state, and therefore when we wake up and raise this question, why am I here? Who am I? What am I doing? Why am I doing? It is then that the real journey starts. As long as we don't know who we are, why we are here, where we have to go, we are in the position of the man who is standing on the platform, not knowing what to do idly, and somebody comes and nudges him and says, "Are you are my gaon wala." "Ah, are wah. So where are you going?" "I don't know." "Where are you going?" "I also don't know." "So what to do?" So he says, "This train seems good. Shall we climb this train?" So then a third person comes, he says, "But I have ticket for the other train. Why don't you come along?" So they all sit in a train without really realizing why they are and where are they going. So this situation is not a good situation. We must know who we are, and that's where the integration starts. So though in the field of nature, we cannot really have a integration where there is a constant shifting ground. We need to find that stable ground. But even in the field of nature, there are these three gunas. We know about them: tamoguna, rajoguna, satoguna. But instead of going into that detail, we can roughly say that there are two ways that people try to integrate. One is the asuric way, which is rajo tamoguna, rajas gravitating towards tamo, and the daibik way, which is rajo sattoguna, rajo going towards sattva. So how does the asuric being try to integrate? He integrates by monopolizing. He integrates by crushing. He integrates by dominating. He integrates by finishing all opposition. He integrates by taking away all the possibility. He's the devourer. That's why, we hear that Rakshasas eat a lot, gigantic appetite. What is that appetite? And if one is in the company of such a human being, it can be very dangerous because the person will, eat away the consciousness. Such is because it's their nature. So they eat emotions, they eat thoughts, they eat life energy. Of course, now the asuras have changed, so they don't eat the physical body, but they leave it without rays of energy. So there is one kind of integration which is not integration, but which is an asuric dominance, possessiveness, control by crushing everything. And the weapon they use is propaganda. This is the only thing. This my opinion. They don't use the word opinion. Huh? They say this is the truth, and you better listen to me. And even religions and many other, they use it. I mean, just because somebody labels something as religion doesn't mean it is Daivik. Many religions today are completely asuric, even in their origin. So that is one part. So we don't want to go that route. So the other, because it doesn't allow for any integration. It's not integration. It is actually finishing. It is, it wants everything to be on a standard formula. Propaganda. Everything should be standardized. Everybody should wear this way, speak this way. As the mother said that, Tolstoy son, he met her in Japan and said, I have an idea for making humanity one. So, integration is to make one. But how? So he said, very simple. If everybody speaks the same language, then people will have no problems. Now, of course, he was too naive because even two people speaking the same language, when they live in a same house, they fight. And in fact, if they don't know the same language, they are less likely to fight because they don't understand that there is so the person is abused. By the time you ask, the person says, no, nothing. So sometimes, so it's nothing to do with everybody doing the same thing. That's not integration. That's not oneness. Integration is where everything is uplifted to a great height and it finds its truth, and that's ultimate harmonious truth in which all become one. So, first thing that we heard yesterday, and now Devas do that. Devas don't crush, they illumine, they ennoble. So always in ancient, when we see Arya Dharma, when the Aryan conquered a kingdom, he didn't want to finish it. He allowed it to prosper. And the classical example is Lord Rama himself. So Rama goes all the way to Kishkinda. Kishkinda in a way is conquered. Angad, Sugriv are all his friends. And Lanka is conquered because he is killed Ravana and Vibhishana is with him. But he doesn't say, now I am the conqueror of Lanka. He simply gives the hands over the kingdom to Vibhishana. And because he knows that it's dharma. So the integration that he was doing was transpersonal. It was not around a personality. It was done around a transpersonal reality, a reality which is dharma. So same thing we see with Sri Krishna when he speaks about the Dharma Rajya and the Rajasu Yagya and all these Yagya, they were Ashwamedh Yagya, they were meant to basically not just bring kingdoms under one king, but to bring them under a larger umbrella of Dharma. So there is, that is how the mind proceeds. The highest ideal that the mind can conceive in our, Dharma itself has two connotations. Ordinarily we conceive as Dharma the highest ideal we can conceive. And that's what yesterday we were speaking of, that we should have such a large ideal and a Catholic ideal, in which we can integrate things. Supposing the ideal is very small and narrow, then we cannot integrate. Supposing the ideal is that, I will always remain, vegetarian is still okay, but there are some people who form as an ideal, I will wear, kapda of one rang, or sometimes even I will not wear a kapda. So once somebody discussed with me about it, I said he should at least think it is not only about him, but there are others who are meeting you. So you are rigidly attaching yourself to an idea which actually you are just thinking of your own salvation. Now that is not how one can integrate. So that's how cults are formed, sects are formed, where we don't integrate. See, cult and sects, what do? They blur all other voices. You have to believe in all the rules and regulations, then only you are accepted. And it is here that we find something very beautiful and unique about Sri Aurobindo, that he allows us freedom to grow in different ways. But the central goal has to be remembered. That's how. So we have to first discover that idea, which is largest, widest, most Catholic of all, in which actually every diverse elements can be integrated. And there is no greater idea than what is given in the Isha Upanishad. Sri Aurobindo speaks about that. And that idea is, one is Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam. the divine is in all beings. And then the other one is, where he says the one self is in all beings. So we can take that idea that the divine is within me, then the divine within me and the universal self are one. This is very important, because otherwise I'll say divine is within me. But as far as you people blasphemy and you are, gone cases, so divine is only within a group of people. No, the widest idea India has given to integrate. See, that is the beauty of Sanatana Dharma, that the divine is within me, the divine is in all, and all is in the divine. Just now, some time back, we were, speaking about how the divine looks at the world. So we look at the world, me, divine, this, that, one follower, another devotee, all this is our way of looking at it. For the divine, if you ask him, how do you look? He says, what to do? There is nothing else but myself. So he is playing with himself. That's how it goes. So this idea is the largest idea in which we can synthesize the diverse stand. This idea can integrate. What it can integrate? For example, let's take a few examples. In the Western world context, we have a division between science and religion. How this division came, there's a whole background history, and I'm not going to get into that. But basically, people like Copernicus, Galileo, Charles Darwin, they had to face so much opposition, even Wright brothers. Why? Because it was like, you are saying something which contradicts religion. How can you say that Earth is not the center of the world? Now, thing is that Earth is the center, which is written in certain scriptures, is from a different standpoint. That understanding was not there. So it was like, because he said something which was blasphemous. Same thing with poor Darwin, that his own wife almost abandoned him. She used to be very unhappy that I love this man, and he also loved her. But he couldn't discuss his deepest things. Because to speak of evolution, when there is creationism, again one can easily reconcile from the Sanatana Dharma point of view. But it was blasphemy that God created everything within 7 days. How can there be an 8th day when there is a new era which is starting? But actually what it meant was that prototypes of humanity on 7 planes. It's a very beautiful story in the Bible, by the way. To say that it's not that Bible is wrong, it's our understanding is wrong. When it is said that on 6 days he created and the 7th day he took rest, basically on all the 7 planes, he created prototypes of beings. And 7th is the matter. If we take the Sachidanand and all these 7 planes. And then he rested, means now the play has to unfold. That whole thing has to unfold. So actually it indicates towards involution and evolution. But ordinarily, you see, there is so much of quarrel. Even there are places in the in certain countries out there. I'm not going to name which country, lest visa is not granted next time. But where, in the colleges, there is a big problem. If you teach evolution, people take a strong objection. Because there is no evolution, there is creation. And there is a lot of debates that creationism versus evolution. And if you try to tell them, they don't oppose each other. So the things are created in the ideative world. In the ideative world, you can build everything without manifesting. The Mahabharata or a poem in its essence exists within. Then you express it. In expression, there is time and place and evolution. All evolution is manifestation. Anyways, so the important thing here to understand is that if we take the widest idea, then there is no problem. Why? Because is God there in science? Yes, He is everywhere. Is He there in the scientist? Yes, He is everywhere. Is He in matter? Yes. Jare jare mein kan kan mein tera noor samaya. In everything there is that, in each atom of existence, that's how the mother puts it, in each atom of existence there is a fire that I kindle. So can we imagine that the entire creation, is God there in the person who is a big sinner? For all we know, He may be more with him because he may realize that he's a nutcase, and who else but He can heal him. He can't say, I don't care for you, you are gone. He has to go all the more near him. That's how the stories are. So ultimately, we must pick up that idea, the widest idea. And from that idea, we try to pick up everything. Then we will see that we will discard nothing. That's how we can integrate life. When Mother was asked, Mother, when the supermind comes down, what will it reject? Mother said, reject? But why should it reject? If we go by what Sri Aurobindo has said, it will reject nothing. So then a disciple doesn't understand, because we have heard about aspiration, rejection, surrender. Then she says, actually, it means something else. We just, I'll talk about it just in a moment. But it says, reject nothing. What it will reject is the artificiality, the hypocrisy, the falsehood. So, what is rejection? Rejection is to take away the cover so that the true picture comes out. It's like when a murti is being built, an idol, huge nowadays, statues. So, when a statue is being built, then nobody sees it till a point of time. It is covered by nobody, everybody is waiting what will come out. Then one day you take off the cover and then you discover the wonderful sculpture that is behind. Same thing happens with human life, that for a long time we are simply work in progress. And if people can understand, and I would rather suggest, recommend that in house keep this little placard inside your pocket. And if your wife or husband say, I thought you are this, you are that, please take out that placard and show I am work in progress. See, such a wonderful thing Shirvinda said, man is a transitional being. What a blanket cover. We are not finished product, excuse me. Don't expect, People come and ask, oh, we want to see some supramental specimen in ashram. So sometimes I say, first you become a good mental specimen, then we will show you the supramental specimen. So the idea is discover that widest idea. So this is one way to integrate. But this doesn't help us in everyday life. I may understand that there is God within each element of creation. How do I deal with it? If God comes to me in the form of a snake, do I stand and say, oh God, I'm Shiva, come, embrace me? Well, he will embrace me and together we'll go to Shiva. Is a word. He'll grant moksha for sure. So to integrate in action, we need that focus through which the divine consciousness spreads itself into creation. That link, that nodal point is the psychic being. Psychic being is the link between the divine and our nature as it is presently formed. So it is through the psychic that the divine gives us this indication, that indication, where to go. See, this in the ideative world it doesn't. That's why Vedantins had this big problem. Until we bring out this greater light, it is very difficult. Or we directly have the access to intuition. But that's not easy. But this is within our reach. So it should be the effort for all of us to step back from surface nature, where we are standing in a crowd, jostled by all kinds of things, and discover this inmost being. Does it need seclusion? May or may not. It depends. If there is a power of concentration, if there is sincerity, one can do it anywhere. I remember once a little incident, must be around 18, 19, studying in Medical College, Pune. So we used to take a train, Gitanjali Express, coming all the way to Kolkata. So, young student, we don't care about, booking, shooking, just get into the train general compartment. You're so happy doing it. So you get up with a little bag, and because you are young, you can sit, you can find the seat and sit there by the window and you're very happy. Then suddenly I took out a book, biochemistry book, and started reading. Then there was an old lady trying to, looking at me and trying to sit. So I felt a lot of, pity, and I said, mercy. I said, okay, you sit. So then I was so lost in that book. It continued for 8 hours. I was just standing in the general compartment reading through the book. Then suddenly I realized, train is stopping and going. Suddenly I realized my seat. I realized that lady has gone and given to somebody else. Now I can't even say, ki, Bhaiya, this is my seat. Luckily that person was going to a nearby place, and I said, see, I'm sorry, but actually, I know it is not my seat, but I had given it to a lady. Will you be kind enough to? He said, nice people those days, Anyways, people who are coming from, no, simple folks are nice people, let me tell you. If you ask a little bit from somebody who is, rich class, there was a very nice little thing I had read. जेब थी खाली मगर दिल था भरा. दिल हुआ खाली, भरी है जेब जब से. So when my pocket was empty, my heart was full. And now that my pocket is full, My heart has become empty. So that's the price we pay for civilization. And I'm telling you, just look at when you go to a street vendor, you'll see an old lady selling fruit products or whatever, vegetables, an old lady, and you bargain and she will very cheap price. I don't know, so I don't want to say, bhindi 30 rupees a kg. Maybe I am grossly off the mark. But you ask something like that, or mango season. So, okay, 50 rupees a kg. And supposing you tell her, Amma, make it little less. So she will say, okay. So she will make it, okay, 40, 45. Then while measuring, she will on her own make sure that the balance is little more tilted in your favor. She'll do it very willingly. Go to a branded shop and tell them, Bhaiya, this shirt is little too expensive. Will you reduce 100 rupees? He will show you the gate. So this is the kind of mindset. So we become so narrow. We can't integrate when we are narrow. Integration means vastness. And there is no way to become vast when our goals are narrow. If our aim is only to earn money, forget about integration. Then we are like, whatever makes me earn money. But this wealth comes at the cost of inner depravity. We lose the wealth of the spirit because we lose kindness, we lose generosity, we lose many of these things, charity, which are gifts of the soul and help us ascend. So, nevertheless, we have to step back from this crowd, and we can do it while in the crowd. In fact, the sign of a person ready for yoga is when in the crowd he can be alone. There is something like that written by Sri Aurobindo. Not exact words, but when you can be alone in the crowd, and when you are alone and you realize you have multitudes. Walt Whitman's poetry. I contradict myself. I carry multitudes. Because you realize that you're not one being but many beings. And you have to set all these beings in their place. See, that was the problem of the old paths of yoga. Jnana yoga. So he, looks upon emotions and impulses and will and not this, not this. Ultimately find the self but denuded self. Or even a bhakta goes into his secret chamber and bhaj govindam, bhaj govinda. What about others? He is an outcast. Though bhakta is not likely to do so often, but it has been done. But there is no integration really. But that's why Sri Aurobindo brought this synthesis of yoga. And the first kind of integration we find from the scriptural point of view is the Gita. It integrates beautifully heart, will, and the mind. Why? Because it integrates everything around the central will. So there should be a goal which is so wide, so vast. And then when we search for that, but first thing is to detach from all these surface attractions. That's why one of the simplest but most powerful exercises, even before we talk about integration, is to learn to do works for selflessly, nishkam karma. This is very, very powerful method. We all have read about it. We all, these WhatsApp university, phal ki chinta mat karen. They think phal means that fruit which you get in the market. And after teaching this phal ki chinta mat kar, the person who is giving this jnana of the Gita is eyeing the pocket. That's not... You see, hypocrisy and falsehood doesn't work in front of the divine. But what it means, genuinely, we are tied all the time to the surface, drawn because of the surface. What will be the result? And the result need not be only material gain. A lot of people say, we are not working for, money. Some people will say that we are not here for money, we are here to do mother's work. But what it means by mother's work, we want approval of somebody. So it boils down to the same thing. Ultimately, there is an outer result. Sometimes you want a pat on the back. Sometimes one may want promotion. Sometimes one may want name and fame. And all these things can masquerade in such ways. Now, the moment we have these kind of preferences, we cannot really integrate. Because now our life is being led by an external, what is called in psychology as outer locus of control. But the locus of control has to be within me. I must be the master of my house. So we have to set this house in order where each thing must find its place. The mind cannot, because mind will say thought dominance. Heart cannot, because heart will drag everything. When heart drives, then even the mind of the sage trembles, because then heart will say, come, the mind will give a very nice justification. Or it cannot be done by any kind of, you know, impulses and any kind of desires, least of all. So this integration can only be done when first of all we learn to detach ourselves from the surfaces of life and learn to go within and be focused entirely on the inner goal. This is wonderful actually, nothing to worry. You see, now I am referring to the phone calls. Don't worry, this is exactly what we are reading. Yoga is all the time. The practice of concentration should be such that nothing disturbs us, whether it's a phone call or a bomb blast. See, practical yoga at each point. Sorry for the diversion. There was a phone call, so I was referring to that in the recording room. So, this is how one has to practice the yoga steadfastly. First, bring the locus of control inside. So, what does it mean? So, what will be the basis of my action? My action should be such as makes the divine happy. That's the only purpose why one exists. Now, fortunately, divine is not happy by, all kinds of outer things. Divine is happy and divine beings are happy when we have a movement which is beautiful, unselfish. At one place, the mother says, do you think that if you make a god seated in front of you and do all kinds of worship and puja, he will like it? He said, he will not like it at all. Just imagine a real God seated, and in front of him you keep bringing coconut and breaking it. After 2-3 coconut, the God will say, come here, your head, this coconut I want. If you are ready to break it, I am going to break it with my tap. So this is the whole thing, that coconut breaking is a breaking of the shell of the ego. This, when we break the shell of the ego, the beautiful, tasty stream of love, the amrit, the rasa comes out. That's what the God wants. So what do we do when we break? We throw away the shell. And we drink the water and we keep that inside that little white thing to take it as prasadam. So this is a symbol of our consciousness. So we also, as long as we live in the shell of the ego cannot integrate. Even a Devi ego. Why Devi ego cannot integrate? See, Devas have their own issues. They live by certain ideas and ideals. They cannot tolerate the Asuras. So Asuras come with their own problems and Devas are rushing to, you dare do this, say this. But Divine doesn't look at it like that. As Savitri says, there is hope even for those dark deities who have leaped in revolt. They too are safe. A mother's arms desires her rebel sons. So this is how we have to go within and discover that psychic center. Then there is another aspect of integration. I'm just rushing through the subject. Discovery of the psychic center is a topic by itself. So, but basically the important thing is we must will it, and will it sincerely. Everything in the world is possible if we sincerely will it. But unfortunately, this dialogue is misused by saying कि सिद्दत से जिसकी तमन्ना करो मिल जाता है. It's not tamanna and desire. But desire also is like a formation. It goes and really builds up a case in your favor. But that's not in favor, because very often when we get the object of desire, we discover, oh, this is not what I wanted. But if we will sincerely anything, no process, method, these are all outdated things. Somebody kneeled and in an ecstasy was overjoyed. And suddenly God appeared. For days and nights he was walking jungle in search of the divine. That day he was filled with that ecstasy and he leaned and God appeared. People saw that this is it. This is how God appeared to him. And they make a cult out of it, that only if you kneel and pray, God will appear. He doesn't care about all these things. Get that seeking. So, before even we speak about integrate, with whom we will integrate? Around an idea? No. However wide the idea may be, it has to be around the only the great truth that the individual self and the universal self are one, which is around the one self. Call it divine, call it whatever, that's up to each one. And therefore, we must try to discover, very simple to discover God. It is all complicated, people have made by, so do, do this way, that way. Arey, he is Karuna mein, full of love. Just tell him, I want you. I seek you with all my heart. He will arrange each and every circumstance. It's not that suddenly you will appear instantly like a magic miracle. Magic is different stuff. God doesn't deal with magic. He is real. Real stuff. You say, you really want to meet me, my child? Yes, Lord. Okay, start on the journey. What do I have to do? He'll say, I'll do, but you be ready. So we don't know what it means to be ready. So hold my hand, very happily hold my hand. And then he starts pulling us from everything. Say, Lord, but I like this, I like that. Do you want to come with me? See, okay, yeah, I'll come with you. After some time again, Lord, don't you think you're taking me too far from the shore? Yes, but we have to go very far. Can't I stay near the shore? I can see my people as well as, You say, oh, is it? So, what was it you were wanting earlier? Lord, I want you, but I want this also. You'll say, okay, then stay for some time. Then you'll stay for some time. It's described in Savitri, the whole world traveler. After some time, you will say, God, when I find you, I'll find everything within you. Then I will integrate everything. First step is to find the divine. There is no other way. And when we find the divine, then we find itself in everyone, naturally. And then our dealing with life changes. We are so easily able to integrate in each atom of existence, in each dust, everywhere we can find. So the next step is to integrate ourselves with the world. And the first world is the people whom you are living with. Most difficult, because human beings have a mind. Mind is like sharp edges, The more developed the mind, the more sharp the edges. Unformed, undeveloped, jelly-like mind. It's not ready for evolution, unfortunately. Mind of the mass, driven by stock ideas. But the moment you become individualized, you develop sharp edges. But this is a phase, you can't help it. But when this individualized mind offers itself to the divine, then it becomes a lovely ice cream. But not for everybody to eat. So it is a process through which we go through, and then we start harmonizing with this world around. On what basis? Not on the basis of my profit, my benefit, my results, my likes, dislikes, but around the fact that I have my views, you have your views, your is needed at this point for evolution, mine is needed at that point. But even though we stand with our views, we are not enemies. We are united. We are united in the divine. We are united in the work. We are united in the common goal. So this is how one will start from there. Ultimately, what is the common goal? Common goal is not limited to a place. Common goal is that this earth should become divine. Why else has it been created? So then when we meet anybody, depending on whatever level one is, and it can go to what extent, Mother says, when you have discovered the divine self within. She says we should be able to reach a point where we should be able to say like that sage. She's referring to some sage, and I may not remember exact lines. But when you look at people, somebody who is seemingly what we would in ignorance call wicked or this thing, we should be able to say, arise, O resplendent one. Cast off this mask of ignorance and falsehood. It doesn't befit you. See, that is how Ratnakar was changed into Valmiki. But it has to be done with that power of conviction or the power of truth and faith. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It doesn't work as a formula. But when we can see with that eye that here is, this whole creation is divine. Then when we just go and be by the side of the tree will come and take us in its arms. We'll feel replenished. It will say, come, you have come, my child. You'll see God there. See, that was the beauty of Sri Aurobindo's first experience. The first experience of Vasudevam Sarvamiti. Not first, it is the ultimate experience of old yogas. So wherever we go, we can find the arms of a beloved, our lover. and life begins to change beautifully. We start integrating not only with human beings, we understand the difficulties, become generous by heart because we have worked upon our own difficulties, so we know it's not easy. Sometimes good to remind each other when people are very hypercritical, tell them, have you conquered your issues, sir? I have my issues, you have yours. Let's help each other conquer the issues rather than, start condemning. And the more we rise in consciousness, the less we condemn, the more we become generous. True tolerance comes from there. Tolerance doesn't come from the mind, it comes from a deep understanding that human nature falters, stumbles, and when we have worked upon a difficulty, then we discover that. So, when we become generous, these qualities of the soul develop. And in our dealings with human beings, we are generous, we are equal, we don't take it to heart. Somebody said this, oh, I'll remember all my life. Poor fellow has forgotten. Next day you are cross, and he says, why are you cross with me? Have you not had this situation in the family? You say, you said this. Oh, did I? No, 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 I didn't mean this. So you realize sometimes one carries it like a knot in the heart. Don't carry knots. Open the knots. Dil ki gira khol do. Open the knots and offer it to the divine. Life is meant for freedom and vastness and light and delight. It's not meant for living in knots. But we keep tying knots, knots, knots. So in this freedom and vastness, we unite with creation. And naturally, when we unite with creation on this basis, then we discover the Creator as the integral whole. That is the great vision on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, where we see the vision of the Creator not only as one who creates, but also one who destroys. And life becomes very simple. In everything, we see the divine. All becomes divine in that state, in that attitude. It's a journey. It cannot be adopted just like that. And then this idea of low, high, this activity represents God, that one doesn't represent God. All this is washed away. In everything, even the most lowest and obscurest of activity, there is God. That's what Sri Aurobindo says. But we have to discover Him. It's not easy. So even in the most obscure activity, there is God. And if we take care, and when we have discovered Him within, then it's possible to do that in each and every activity of nature and thereby transform life. So this is the large landscape. I know it's a very vast subject, and I'm sure tomorrow Dr. James is there who will deal with it more. But meanwhile, we have 5-10 minutes. So if there are any questions, you're most welcome. Also welcome to post them or email them. Yeah. So, let me give the widest possible answer to, sometime when we are walking on the right path and what looks like a wrong path. See, this right and wrong is a division that the mind creates, and it is necessary for action. I'm not saying it's not needed at a point of time. But the larger truth is that what we call as the wrong path is a path which we think or feel has taken us away from the divine. I'm talking of those who are walking on the path. So what do? Even in that activity, see, there are certain activities, there are certain movements of consciousness which definitely veil, as it were, the divine presence within, if we have found it, or else which seem like, they are going to veil. So even in those activities, we have to learn to invoke the divine. And when we call her, whatever be the state, whatever be the situation, instead of entering into judgment, and followed by judgment, we enter into remorse, then guilt, then anger and frustration. Instead of that, just keep invoking the divine. Yes, the difficult, what we call as wrong paths, are also parts of a nature. You see, when we climb on a mountain, Sri Aurobindo does not take us through just one route to it's the entire Himalaya darshan. I think you may have heard about Chotnarayan Sharma. One of the things which I still remember when I went to Nainital, and he would tell me, he said something very nice. He said, with Sri Aurobindo, सब कुछ सुंदर असुंदर सब कुछ पूरा हिमालय दर्शन है. The mind invariably creates this division. And as I said, it's necessary at a certain stage. Otherwise, we'll be completely lost. But in the widest vision, ultimately, even the most asundar, the most seemingly thing which seems to be taking us away, is ultimately has within it a core of the divine. So the solution the mother gives, it's there from volume 10, those who want to read it. I think it's volume 10. She says, do not try to be among the holies. Bear your own burden of the anti-divine. So she says, and so what to do? She says, when we are moved by impulses, as you said, sometimes it's speech, sometimes it's actions, feelings, because they are part of the nature's plan. She says, instead of judging them as good and bad, see, good and bad prevents offering. Because when we judge a thing as bad, then our first response is guilt. And we try to come out of that rather than offer it. How can I be like this? So instead of judging oneself, just offer it to her. She says that offer it. She says not rejection or suppression, but offer it. And by offering it, anti-divine, could you say? Yeah. This is based on one of the aphorism of Sri Aurobindo. Examine thyself without pity. Then thou wilt be more charitable and pitiful to others. So even we must examine ourselves, So she says, that's essentially what this aphorism says, seen from the other end. So long as a single human consciousness carries the possibility of feeling, acting, thinking, or being in opposition to the great divine becoming, it is impossible to blame anyone else for it. It is impossible to blame the adverse forces, which are kept in the creation as a means of making you see and feel how far you still have to go. And then she goes on and says, yeah. And it corresponds to a state where you are so perfectly identified with all that is, that you concretely become all that is anti-divine. Just read the power of these words. And so you can offer it up. It can be offered up and really transformed through this offering. This sort of will in people for purity, for good, which in ordinary mentality is expressed by a need to be virtuous, is actually the great obstacle to true self-giving. To be virtuous. In fact, at one place she says even that this is acts like an ill will, because it takes us away. Divine wants us to go through all states of consciousness to transform them. But we are like people saying, no, this room is dirty, don't please let me enter there. I want only that nice living room. You be with me there. But he says, no, you have a storehouse. Sir, I know, but I have seen sometimes snakes there. Yeah, don't worry, I am the Lord even of snakes, come with me. No, sir, please don't show me. So when we go there, we tend to feel suffocated and come out. So she says, don't do that. Instead, what we should do, know that she is there with us. And then she says, it's the root of falsehood, the very source of hypocrisy, the refusal to take up one's share of the burden of difficulties. And that's what Sri Aurobindo has touched on in this aphorism, directly and very simply. So what is the remedy she gives? Do not try to be virtuous. See, this right and wrong create this problem. It doesn't mean that try to be wicked. No, she's not saying that. Obviously that nobody will try. But do not try to be virtuous. See to what extent you are united, one with all that is anti-divine. Take up your share of the burden. Accept to be impure and false yourself. And in so doing, you will be able to take up the shadow and offer it. All of us have this shadow inside. This is the great teaching of Mother Sri Aurobindo, that there is in us a shadow, that little spot. And actually, the path of the conquest runs through this shadow. Just we can't escape it. See, in traditional yoga, we withdraw from all this is dark. But here you have to enter into that at some point. Of course, this doesn't mean that one stays from beginning that I am in the shadow. No, first is to find the divine. And then one will encounter this shadow at some point of time. And insofar as you are able to take it and offer it, things will change. Don't try to be among the pure, except to be with those who are in darkness and in total love, offer it all. So the process is to keep offering it. And as to speech, I think one of the things that helps with regard to speech is just to learn to step back a little. It's a very basic practice. Not only speech, but everything. One learns to step back in life before rushing into action. And it's a great help. It takes time, but eventually, by again to offer this speech to her with aspiration to illuminate, to make it pure, to make it beautiful, to make it divine, then it eventually changes. It's a long process because this is yoga of transformation. Unlike traditional yoga where you live in a secluded spot within our being. So all this will come part of the process. We are all together in it. So yes, it is long, very long. But what waits at the end of the night are the arms of our divine beloved. We have to discover him not only in the day but also in the night. He wants to meet us on the nuptial couch in night, draped in night. So be it. See, when it's night in physically we can see. There is the day when sun rises in splendor. But there is something we miss in the daytime, and that is the stars forming a necklace around him, the beauty of the moon floating in sky. So this is also an experience. So one has to go through. Kali is also divine mother. Yes. Just offer and everything. Yes, her grace and love is there, and that is the great remedy. Without judging. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I can understand, especially when we are attached to people, we love them, care for them, and their opinions begin to matter to us. So, basically, what we have to understand here is that there are two approaches one can take. One is a little more drastic and radical approach, and that approach is that ultimately human opinions don't count. What counts is what the divine feels or knows about us. And fortunately, the divine doesn't judge but changes. So we have to keep offering. But that's a little too radical and drastic approach. The second approach, which can be very helpful, but it requires a lot more, what shall I say, maybe kind of courage, is that when there is a criticism leveled at us. So we look at it. The mother says this is how she used to deal with criticism, that to look at it very impersonally and see, is there a truth in the opinion? Is there a kernel of truth in that standpoint? Maybe I am blind to something, but through somebody else, mother is saying something to me which may be true. And when I look at it very impersonally, very impartially, I may discover in it a kernel of truth. Now, when we discover that there is something within us which is not so nice, very often we get depressed. But she says we should be happy because it's an opportunity to progress. But at the same time, very often the person doesn't know what's our inner state, and it may not be true at all. Most judgments that people cast are ignorant judgments. So in that case, we have to just smile and discard it, knowing very well that, well, this is not what I have done, this is not why I am doing what I am doing, and regardless of the judgment of the person, I have to stand and go by what I truly believe in. So it helps on one level in individualizing ourselves, because when we face oppositions and still trust in, what we believe to be true, and we follow that trail, sorry, that's a path of human evolution. But yes, it is painful. All individualization is a very painful process, because you'll always find people. Individualization means that we are coming out of the masses. And what nature does is, for the purposes of individualization, it almost invariably places us in contact with people who will oppose you. There was a very interesting little thought I had read as a youngster just after my medical graduation. I loved it. It was written that the most beautiful shells are, carved when the entire ocean rushes against it. So what happens when the entire ocean force rushes against it? You will see beautiful colors and splashes and nice scarves. But the shell has to withstand it. So when we go through this process of individualization, yes, we will find opposition. We should know it is God's plan. He is shaping us. Although the shaping God's tremendous touch is felt as pain, the spirit rises mightier with each defeat. So we have to allow the process, smile at it, and know that behind all these opinions, viewpoints, people's judgment, Look for that little trace of light which is there at the core. Just pick up. It's nothing to do with that human being. But there is some trace of light, pick it up and progress. And if none of it is true, when one looks inside, then it's okay. One only understand that, well, this is a fact that as human beings we are not equipped really to understand what's going on in another person's consciousness. We are just not equipped. So to expect that somebody would really understand is itself a big error. So we have to just do that course correction and know that really apart from divine nobody can understand, and yet he can speak even through a child who can tell us that, emperor, you are without the clothes. And we have to then look at ourselves. Sometimes that is also needed. So most important element is not what people are saying or not saying, what their judgment is, but the urge for progress and the direction we want to move. For somebody who wants to unite with the divine, everything will become an occasion to move further at whatever level we are. And we are not here for, making people, satisfying their idea of what a spiritual person should be or what we should be. Each one is unique, and we are here to become his ice cream, not not the, everybody's potpourri. Yeah. Exactly. I see. I'll tell you one thing. This both experience as well as what people have. Union between two beings can only come from the heart. The mind cannot unite. It can have a place for different standpoints, but heart is the center of unity. It is only love that can unite. But with the mind, we'll play with idea. There will be sometimes similar thoughts, sometimes contradictory thought. But when it comes to heart, it unites. So basically, that ground doesn't allow. Mind has created. Mind by its nature is the divisive power. So it cannot really unite. It's meant to create individualities. It is meant to, by its nature, look at things separately. So yeah, but yeah, responsibility, I think we have to realize that our main responsibility is towards the divine. And while we try to do what is best, I understand the point that things don't hurt. We should never will to consciously hurt anyone, subtly not, or harm anyone. Yet we must understand that in this wide becoming, nobody can as of now escape a certain degree of pain in the process of evolution. Sometimes somebody may, unfortunately, we may be sometimes on the receiving side, which is okay. Sometimes because of our actions or inactions, somebody else may be on the receiving side. And how much ever you may explain, that's the person's journey, the whole perception and everything. Because everybody is playing with perception. Nobody knows the truth. So one has to just accept it as uh, the part of the play or the price for the great journey. Can't help it. Yeah. Okay, James. So shall we? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.